Hello and welcome, fellow citizens near and far. Today we're talking about all things divestment. Conversation is going to go a couple of different places, I'm sure. I have some really great guests that are going to come join us. We're going to go through understanding the concept behind well-being economies. I've been saying care economies, but the language matters, and well-being is actually what my friend J.Friday is going to be talking about. We're going to be learning about companies and organizations that are already on the ground doing things well. What comes to mind immediately are things like Free Water and Farm Fresh 24/7, but I'm sure we'll hear from others. We're going to be looking at some practical steps in order that any individual can look around in their area and region and feel inspired to take some action or get with people who may be already doing so. We're going to be talking about ethical systems of investment and banks. There's many different ideas under the umbrella of divestment. So it's going to be a really great time. I look forward to having a wonderful conversation. So just to get us started off again, to kind of brush over the idea of what all things divestment is, my good friend Miranda with Tea and Transplants has the idea of, divesting from the billionaire class being, a rallying cry of sorts. And I think that this can go a lot of different ways. I am really excited to hear, y'all's individual take on it as we get started in the conversation. Hello, J.Friday. Thanks for being
Hi.
here.
Thank you for having me. Hi, Tony.
All right. So to get started, why don't we just go ahead? What?
I just wanted to say I like that our shirts all kind of match.
Yeah, we got a nice color palette going today. I can dig it. So to get started, why don't we just go ahead and briefly discuss what this idea means to us. I kind of already vamped for a little bit, so I would like one of y'all to go ahead and pick it up first, then I'll come back around. What is divesting from the system actually? What are your first thoughts about it? J.Friday, if you wouldn't mind going first.
Yeah, so I'm coming at all this from a systems theory perspective, and if you keep feeding the old extractive-based systems, well, then you don't have any energy to put into the new well-being-based regenerative systems. So it's a necessary step, obviously, to step away from what's not working.
Absolutely, great way to put it. Tony, what are your first thoughts?
Divestment in general means putting your energy elsewhere in general, right? You're not going to invest in one thing. But more specifically, I think it's about autonomy, because in a distant world where power structures and supply chains are very far away, we seem to be helpless and powerless to the quality of those goods, the cost of those goods, what's in those goods, and so many complications that we have, and especially in the mass-produced products that we purchase. So divestment to me means finding autonomy and a hyper-local community when it comes to buying power.
Right on. I will say that, we do champion hyper-local around here a lot. And it's a double-edged sword, because we see some things working in areas brilliantly. We're going to point to Farm Fresh 24/7 a couple of times today, I'm sure. Lawrence may or may not stop by. We'll see. But there's an idea of these systems of which we operate obviously are not working. And then, of course, with the mass production scale, we get very little say. So bringing those things back home, and it's like, there's a bunch of little facets we can think about this with, whether it be the food we eat, the soaps that we use, like any sort of like consumer good that, we may get. And like, I don't know, this conversation gets really nuanced when we start talking about technologies and things like that, things that we do not build here. But, it's one of those where if we can start where, our biggest needs are, the food, the shelter, and those sorts of things, and grow our ideas outward, then, the sky's really the limit. The idea is just having enough people knowing that there are options on the line, and that there's places that they can put their energy into that are more local and whatnot. They don't have to go to the big box store. I think part of the biggest battle of this is just spreading the knowledge, which I think we could all agree is kind of a grinding tough point, because people just don't know what's available to them. And then the idea of it being hyper local very much depends on where you are. And so if there isn't something there, then maybe starting it yourself is the way to do it. Any thoughts?
Well, I made a prompt for that for finding well-being economy initiatives in your area, which all these movements, they go by hundreds of different names. And I think there's a pattern here in that people are very overwhelmed. Where do I start? We see this in the business world all the time. Creating a business, a movement, any of these things is creating a very complex system. And everybody wants, they see the whole picture. Yes, divestment, this, we're utopia, we're actually on the verge of it if we all came together, right? But what's the first step? And specifically, what's the first step for me? What do I know that can help one person take one step? So it's really getting really granular and picking one thing and starting.
That's a great point. And I constantly tell people that it's going to really depend on where we are passionate, where we put our energy. Like the idea is, for instance, I was very passionate this time last year to craft a ballot initiative for the right to food. And so like in the state of Colorado, me and my co-sponsor are trying to get that on the ballot for 2026. It's a hard struggle. We need a lot more people than just the two of us. And so it's one of those like, it's a lofty goal. We were inspired by Maine, which was the first state in the union to actually put the right to food in their constitution. And we're not the only state that's trying either. There's a whole community of practice of folks that are trying to get this passed in several states, as well as doing really good work on the ground with like food banks and things. So like these kinds of ways, and it's like they are still set up in a structured system that is dependent on the status quo, because it's kind of seen as more like charity and those sorts of avenues. But it's a transferable model, in my opinion. This community of practice that I'm partnered with can easily be, can shift into like more of a well-being sort of thing. They're just worried about feeding people and like, giving people the agency to eat. And so like, and there's hundreds of problems just like that, and people, trying to find their solutions to it. So it really comes down to what are you passionate about getting started with? And then once you figure that out, finding people that are working on the same cause can be really helpful. Sanity.
The thing I keep thinking of when I'm trying to go down the wormhole of divestment, because it's much like J.Friday saying about divestment, but also just with any form of activism. Anytime somebody wants to get involved, the sheer amount of places to look for initiatives, groups in your area can be overwhelming for some people. So I like the idea of going granular, but I want to push that idea forward a little bit more, which is, as someone who has been into politics their whole life and I tutored people in poli-sci, I'm just going to go out and say the rude thing, which is there's so many people that don't really grasp the system that currently exists. And we have to be real about that. There are those people who are passionate in these spaces, and I think those are the ones that can spearhead making this granular. But then there's this other step that make it accessible. Like there has to be an accessibility in the 21st century in order to get it at scale. Because the undertone here, the thing that's in the parenthesis afterwards, is that you need a lot of it. To achieve the goal of divestment, there is a critical mass, where it really starts to topple the scale. And in order to achieve that, we need to make it accessible. So not only do we make it granular, here's these steps, but you have to make it convenient and accessible to people too. And I feel like we're really entering into that phase, which is exciting, but it's an important component I don't hear talked about enough, which is how do we make this accessible to people?
And I want to say that there is the idea of there being options for people to partake in. Because, like, for instance, with Farm Fresh, in the area that they are most successful in, which is Atlanta, they are a viable option to a lot of grocery store items. And because of that, it's a tit for tat sort of exchange. And so populating that across the U.S., it may not work in every region. I really love his collectively sustainable idea and all of the work that Lawrence is doing. But it's going to probably have to be tailor made. Hey, speak of the devil, here he comes. It's going to have to be tailor made to like each thing that, each community and whatnot. And so like, I would love to see options like that be perpetuated. The idea is the options will be given to people in ways that look enticing, so that way they don't choose the big box store. And I think, that is incumbent on like some really charismatic people, pushing the ideas that work really well, that sort of deal.
To add to what Tony said, isn't Amazon accessible? Isn't it by its very nature very easy? So that's a great point. Coming from a disability perspective, also, yes, the more accessible and fun that we make these systems, the easier it is for people to divest.
Yeah, I mean, having a package dropped off by a drone as a Star Wars kid, just on its face, is kind of sweet. I'm not mad about that. You know what I mean? Like, cool, man. But, the path to get there doesn't seem to be helping humanity. So that level of accessibility is hard to compete with, but it does start small. So I think having apps for people to be able to use as information sources, Ian launched his app to be able to tell which companies own the products in the grocery stores, and you can scan the barcode and it'll tell you, hey, is this one of those companies that's BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street? Because if it is, then you might not want to support that one. And I think making it accessible is going to be crucial to hit that critical mass.
I think it's absolutely a practical step that we can offer to people that will offer up some change in mindset, because it's not something that people can just switch overnight. It's something, it's a progressional thing. I did not start using like my local butcher and those kinds of things like right off the jump. It was a slow burn kind of thing. Hello, my friend. Thanks for joining us today.
Hello. Pleasure is all mine. I appreciate y'all sharing space, man, and holding it up for the conversation.
Yeah. I mean, when I thought about all things divestment as my intro episode, the first person that came to mind was you. And so I was just like, I know we can at least talk about the app, but getting the man here himself to kind of represent would be ideal. So thanks for being here, man.
Absolutely. It's much needed. So I'm just grateful to be in participation of the universal alignment in what we're bringing into fruition. So yeah, man, I'm gonna just dance in, man. I ain't gonna come in and stop the whole party, man. I'm gonna just jump in when I feel the beat hit my body.
I can dig it. Absolutely. So we were talking about practical steps, offering solutions and that sort of deal. And I think that in a company, like, we can think about different things, and different localities are going to need, different needs met and whatnot. But there's common themes. Everybody needs food. Everybody needs a roof over their head, that sort of deal. So when we get granular, it can still be about one of like the big elements that is like it brings us together. Since it is so common, that sort of deal. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's kind of why I'm not gonna say I think that's why, but I have been a community organizer forever, and I've been kind of retracting my story and kind of diving back into my own origin story, if you will, to kind of find out when I had this fire lit up inside of me. And because people ask, and it was since I got out the military in 2006. So I've always been a community organizer, because I was really literally on the front lines in the battlefield and realizing that we aren't who we think we are. So anyway, I've been organizing for a long time, and I've been doing things. They say do what you can with what you have where you are, and I've been doing that from my porch, from my duplex, from an apartment. I've always organized, whether it's barbecues or kickball games or made up games for a Halloween night because we didn't have any. So I've been doing it for the longest, and I settled on food because of its practicality. Right. So again, I'm a believer, and I have been an advocate of hyperlocal resource management. And my whole concept is we do have the hand that we need is at the end of our own sleeves. If we really can go out and meet our neighbors, figure out what they do, what we have in common, and we can kind of connect that on some kind of topical level, then we can start to build something that really can sustain or can hold itself together. So you add food into the mix, and it's the thing that can kind of dismantle any barriers that are there, because we have to eat. Everybody has to eat. And then as a farmer, I kind of got a more, I don't want to say a broader lens, more of a laser-like focus, because as a farmer, I'm getting to see the food system, not on the consumer side, but the other side. And the thing that nobody talks about when we talk about food, or just in general food, is that the farmers do not grow a lot of our food. A lot of our food is trucked in, bussed in, planed in, boated in. So it's almost the perfect recipe for a total system, pause button to be kind of, we might have seen it back 5 years ago, right? So, anywho, the whole thing is to be prepared for that notion, and for that to happen. I think the whole stance is that everybody has to participate in the food system. And then again, I'm saying it like that with the most confidence, because why don't you participate if you need it, right? So it's kind of like you can kind of stop the extra right at the door, because we are opening up the food system to be seed saving. It's opening up to be compost making. It's opening up to be, save the food scraps to feed a farmer's chickens in your area. So it's a lot of different ways that we can participate in the food system. They just haven't been outlined for the average person to kind of commit to. And I say commit with a lot of authority, because I think that's kind of where we need to go. We need to make this a standardized regimen. It needs to be a part of our culture. So I'm sorry for being long-winded, but we created the app Farm Fresh 24/7 to assist with just the procuration, and just really just, again, having that front-facing application to where we can find people in our area. It's really like intentional for you to use Farm Fresh. Is very similar apps out there, Let Go, OfferUp, Facebook Marketplace, the whole nine. But this is the only one that's really intentionally built on hyperlocal food systems. And then it's free. But the thing that I realized after we kind of started it, Damien and myself, we realized very quickly that a lot of Americans did not have the skill set needed to participate in the ways that are the most viable, which is the growing, baking, and making capacity. So that's where Collectively Sustainable comes in. We kind of created that grassroots movement to kind of, one, serve as an incubator system for food production and preservation and animal husbandry, stewardship overall. But then it opens it up to a lot of people who are saying, hey, I want to join the movement, but I'm not necessarily a green thumb, having ass jokers. I really want to join, but I don't have the space, right? So we had to open it up to really allow other institutions of thought and culture to come in, and kind of that amalgamization of this culture that we're recreating or creating for the first time is really going to set in stone, because everybody gets to pour in. Everybody gets to say their 2 cents. So that's where Collectively Sustainable is, and that's where the whole movement is right now. And I'm going to yield my time right now. I know I went over a little bit.
I'm so glad that you brought up Collectively Sustainable on your own, because that was where I was going to go next anyway. Because I think that taking it beyond just the initial problem of the food and that sort of deal, and giving people more power and agency through through continued education and things is like, it's a dynamite way to kind of support your community and make sure that you all are stronger together, which is kind of like the whole point of all of this. We want strong communities, right? So that way we can over the next wave and tides of what is to come, we can really bind together and be okay. Really, I'm just trying to make sure that us in our communities are okay. So yes, thank you so much for coming up. J.Friday, any thoughts on this so far?
Oh, my brain needs a minute, sorry.
That's all right, no worries.
Still taking in everything you said, Lauren.
How about you, Tony? What are you thinking about this right now?
I think it's a really important point to bring up that Lawrence brought up, which is, I'm in Ohio and I am surrounded by cornfields. That's the joke here, but in soybean fields. But the thing you find out, the more you look into it, is that that's not for people. That's either for ethanol production, tons of different soy products, hydrogenated soybean oil, which is in a ton of fried and junk food type products. And it goes to feed corn, which is a whole separate issue in and of itself, as industrial farms using feed corn to fatten up the livestock. And it's really tragic to see just acre upon acre upon acre upon acre upon acre upon acre of food that is not going to feed people in a world where so many people could, use a snack.
Well said. Very well said.
Which is why
that land could be.
Food is the place. I've said it in our conversations before. I'll close with that. Is that I really do think that in divestment, the first most practical step is food. I know there are so many other products and services that we need to detach from over time, but I do feel like food makes the most sense.
I think it's a good place to start because it is a commonplace for every single person. Like, everybody on this planet has to eat. There's no way getting around it. And that, that's very important to like our society. And we've made, here in America, we've made like the abundance of choices makes it feel like we're free and whatnot. But there's things like food deserts and like the idea that people have a hard time getting fresh fruits and veggies when there is, like in my city, technically speaking, I'm really close to being like on the fringe of a food desert. But I have like a park within walking distance that, a little plot of land could easily be a garden, which is part of what's in my initiative for the Right to Food stuff. And so it's like, giving people agency and places with which to turn, grassy areas or, fields of corn into something that'd be more sustainable for the people that are on the ground right there is, in my mind, a simple kind of like perspective shift, but it gets hung up by legalese like all the time. So, which is one of the reasons why Maine is the only state in the United States to have right to food in their constitution. Although I'm sure that's going to change in the next like decade.
I saw front yards being turned into gardens 15 years ago in New England. That was already happening there. Where it's like, why do I want a front yard that like looks curated, when I could actually be providing for myself? And that's another green space in the list that you mentioned. Your front yard is viable.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah, I want to just jump in. Oh, go ahead, Friday. I see you.
Well, I was just going to add to what I think when you started off. I'm trying to rewind back to where you started. But like a point of community and coming together usually happens around food, over a brew. And so this is not only a basic human need, there's also an impactful point of a powerful point of connection for us at the same time. So yeah, I'm on the same page with y'all. Definitely the place to start.
Absolutely, and another caveat that is very much like necessary to be named. I again was a combat medic in the military. I came back with some horrible conditions. I came back a shell of the person I would have desired to be. And I had to really fight tooth and nail to kind of redeem myself again, reclaim myself again. And I went through therapy. I went through drug and alcohol counseling for a long time. And it was the third iteration of the counseling that I finally had a counselor that encouraged me to get out into the yard for a moving meditation. And by this time, I was already nature boy. But I was more so like nature boy in the woods preparing for doomsday, right? Rambo stuff, man, right? Running around screaming, taking, yeah. So she introduced me into a moving meditation. And she said, no, when you go to grow food, be intentional about listening, be intentional about the senses, be intentional about touching, smelling, hearing, seeing what you feel. And it made me sit still for a minute. And the whole application with starting at food is very much practical. But on a level that we don't see is the spiritual aspect, or maybe the mental health aspect that we can actually, and this like we know that nature heals. Like we already know this, like science can show you this exchange happens when you stick your hand in soil, right? It's documented. So we have to add that in as well. And that's really, again, if everybody turns back to the land and everybody starts gardening, or everybody starts to be a part of the food system in some form, shape, or fashion, I believe that healing is going to extend to our communities as well, which is a major part of sustaining anything going forward. We're looking for the healing. We're looking for the answers to the questions we're asking at night, by ourselves in the dark, feeling horrible about what we're eating. So yeah, gardening or homesteading or stewardship is really important on so many different levels, man. It's not even funny how much of an opportunity we have. And I call it the theory of the necessary evil. And it's like things sometimes have to get so bad that people's only option is to go the other way. And I feel like that's what the universe is kind of conspiring on our behalf for our betterment, is really something that it feels horrible now, but if we can sift through the muck and we can kind of frame something up and we can start to enact it, I believe paradise is on the other side.
Absolutely. And I think that there is, the level at which people want to be involved as a consumer, passive consumer, where they're making their bacon, they're farming and whatnot. Then there is a level of people who just want to be consumers. And to those people who may or may not be in the audience, I just want to say you have a power of choice. Like, you can take your money and go find a person that you can actually give that money to for the goods you're looking for. Yes, it would probably be a little bit more expensive because they actually need to eat themselves. The idea, there's this really great short mini series on HBO a couple years back called Years and Years, and it was like kind of a guesstimation of what the future would look like from like 2016 or something like that. And there's this whole point that they make about a dollar a pound t-shirt, like, really cheap products come from overseas because they're manufactured in such a way that, the mass production of them makes them so cheap. And because we all, want the best deal possible, we buy those dollar t-shirts. That's the reason why, the businesses and all of the consumer goods and stuff are so far away from us, because, our demand in our past has been for cheap consumable goods. And so it's a perspective shift. Just like everything else, we have to shift away from what we've been programmed to have, the creature comforts, the keeping up with the Joneses, the bag of Doritos sitting on the couch and those kinds of things, and try to do different, better. Once again, as I always say, we are the adults in the room. It's time for us to stand up and act like it. So, and these kinds of choices are real power. So, like, the next time you go grocery shopping, it doesn't have to be the whole bill. Like, you can still, go get all of your creature comforts or whatever that you enjoy at the big box stores. But if you can take, instead of buying your meats there, if you can find a local butcher, that's money out of their pocket, out of the 3 big companies. And every chance that you decide to do that is only going to make it better. Like, and that wave, as we all decide to put money into people's pockets that we actually can know and see and be face to face with, is a radical change that they don't want. And they're not really expecting us to do it because it is harder and more expensive. So, like, proving them wrong is kind of like the way to do it, That is my rant. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I like to share because I am in the middle of kind of doing a lot of work. So I did want to make sure I prioritize getting on here. But another initiative that we are starting. So we created Farm Fresh thinking that was going to be the solution. I call it an emergent strategy, right? We started Farm Fresh. It was cool. And if you knew how to do it, it was perfect, right? Collectively Sustainable was created so that we can teach, right, with intention. So it's not about the dollar, it's about really passing on the energy and kind of creating that community that we're looking for. So we created the institution to kind of be the immersion aspect of the culture, right? That's what Collectively Sustainable is. And again, damn, I done forgot where I was going. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm back. So what we're doing now in Atlanta specifically is this summer we are starting a mutual aid campaign, right? We're gonna frame it like a grant opportunity, right? Because I've realized that when people see grants, everybody shares the grant, everybody shares the information, because you got a chance to get something free, and it's still free, but it's like in-kind value. So what we're doing is we're going to establish 1,000 food production plots here in Atlanta. 1,000, low cost or no cost. Right? So it's almost like a sliding scale. If you're able to pay the full price, cool. We're going to come and establish a 10 by 10 grid. It's going to grow at least 250 to 340 pounds of food, whether you're full sun, partial shade, or full shade, right? So we have systems that are built to kind of be manufacturable in that capacity. And again, if you can pay the full price, your cost then goes and shifts to somebody who can't pay at all. So we'll divest in that way and spread the load. If you're somebody who can pay for the materials, but not the labor in it, we're going to basically install on that capacity as well. And if you're somebody who can't pay at all, we're going to still install the garden based on people in the area already giving, right? And the whole framework is Collectively Sustainable. We have over 150 members here in Atlanta. So it makes it we're a lot more able to move and maneuver because we're all on the collective space already. So what we're doing is kind of sending out our lighthouses, our educators, our gardeners, our homesteaders, our farmers, urban farmers who are saying, hey, I'll be the educational faculty. We're sending them out. One, when we install a 10 by 10 plot, it's going to be a learning endeavor. So it's going to be a hands-on learning opportunity for people in the community to come see how to till up the ground, how to add the compost, how to transplant your seedlings, and where the spatial relativity should be per plant, right? For these grids. So it's not like we're going to leave you to yourself. This is a grid. This is a function. It's documentable. You can take it home and then recreate it, right? So we're doing that as an educational adjunct. But then after we create the cohorts, and it's going to be like, let's say one lighthouse or one stewardship center, like I would be a lighthouse. I would have 5 to 8 cohorts, right? 5 to 8 members within my cohort. The cohort is going to be extremely hyper local. So I'm only going to leave like maybe 2 miles outside of my house to find these people, right? And then again, me as a farmer, I have the wheelbarrow, I have the tools, I have the compost. Again, they don't have to pay anything. If they do pay, it's like paying it forward. We already have enough resources to start from zero. We're already good. So we're going to start going out and starting to put these things in place. And again, we're going to create these cohorts. The cohorts are themselves going to be the students. Once they get 3 builds down, they're going to help each other build the rest. Right. And that's what's going to happen around Atlanta for these thousands. So it's going to be basically a real initiative that's going to really start food production, because again, that's where we have to go. And one of the things we do teach is native edibles as well. So that's going to be a compartment that's identifiable: chickweed, nettle, all these things that are in your yard are not weeds, they're edible, and you can supplement your diet with those as well. So that's just information we're going to be passing, but the bulk of it is the opportunity to learn how to do it, because that's what we've been pulled away from for so many years, and that's what most people are looking for. So we're going to be putting that out this summer, probably next week. Like, I don't really wait for anything, because we don't have to wait for legislation, we don't have to wait for grants, we don't have to wait for anything, because it's us already saying we're down to use our energy and our resources in a mutual aid capacity. So it's going to show people that we can, 1, change the face of the food system, 2, do it with no money or little to no money. So it's going to be really impactful, and y'all will definitely be seeing it soon. We're planning to really make it visible. We're already planning to call the news and all the big institutions to kind of zero in, because what we figure is, like, the movement doesn't move unless we market it the same way they've been marketing our destruction. So we can't just have great ideas and not move and act on them in a strategic way. That does nothing. That's good for Instagram, but go ahead.
We got to show receipts is where I think you're kind of compiling to, and we got to pull it up and be like, this is a proof of concept. Now that you see it happening, go forth and multiply. Just real quick, I wanted to ask you, what do you think your biggest challenge or barrier is with this next endeavor? Like, where you're standing right now, I know you got it pretty much in implementation, but what do you see being the biggest challenge?
To be honest, after the last 3 months, so we had funding secured for 7 stewardship centers, and the whole stewardship center concept is basically us creating our own institutions for education. So farmers, homesteaders, gardeners, flipping their personal, intimate spaces of healing, and they're flipping them and turning them open for the community to come learn too. I was supposed to be stipending these institutions by the sum of $15,000. Not anything crazy, but small enough to where it's decent. The DEI stuff came in, and we didn't get the funding that we had secured. And what reminded me 3 months or 2 months ago was a community member who said, I would have done that for free. It doesn't matter about the money. Like, Nature Boy, I want to participate. How can we? And it really just reinvigorated and realigned me with the purpose of literally doing things outside of the dollar. We're doing a lot of things outside the dollar, and that's the main barrier typically. Once you remove the dollar and find people who are like-hearted, like-minded, like-spirited, and really in it for the change, really in it for the good of humanity, really in it to really have that co-creative relationship with the earth again, and really stand on something, we don't need the money. So the biggest barrier for us right now is just finding people who can enact what we're saying in their area, so that some people in their area can put eyes on a new culture. And again, this is like a transformative aspect of metaphysics, right? If we all believe it, and we're all doing it to some capacity, it has to be real. So common law is going to reign supreme, because a lot of us are going to come together and say, no, we ain't worried about those laws you passed. We're not worried about cottage house rules and regulations. We're going to do it because it's better for us. And if enough of us do it, universe has to,
There's a level at which like people will see what's going on and be able to, and it's like a turning point, a critical mass. Like enough people start participating, and the herd will kind of follow. Yeah, thank you so much, my friend. Anybody, any thoughts to chime in here?
I was just going to ask you, Lawrence, really quick. Do you have anybody who's done, do you anybody in your community that's doing more like mid-length, 15-minute video feature, telling the story or telling how you're doing things in any way? While I got you here, has that been done yet?
Not really. So we've been documenting our process, and we've been putting it on the tube for the most part. But I'm kind of the marketer and the strategist and the we know how that goes. So yeah,
You do
that's
a lot.
another part of the actual collectively sustainable framework. It's not just the gardeners and the educators. There is a marketing department. We're saying again, like, we have to market this movement. So we're looking for people to come in to collectively sustainable and talk about it. And again, it's not like you're coming into collectively sustainable and losing all your identity. It's like you're just coming in on this collective notion that, hey, yes, we need each other, and yes, I'm down to commit some time for this endeavor that I'm a part of. I'm willing to give my energy for it. Forget the currency, forget the fiat. I'm willing to give myself and be myself and use my skills and my gifts to forward the movement, forward the culture. So in a nutshell, no. And I would love to have someone who can do that 15-minute, if you feel me.
Well, I'm working on it for you.
Right on. See, making connections. This is part of why we're here. So first of all, let me just take a moment and say thank you to my guests, and thank you to everybody who's in the room with us. Having this conversation is really important. We are watching the comments. We appreciate the gifts, the tapping, the liking, the sharing, all of it. It is much appreciated. Thank you so much. Tony, we haven't heard from you in a while. What are you thinking?
I'm just soaking it in, man. I can't help but escape this feeling that there will be these like watershed examples, like these little things that sprout up all over the country that are all aligning with this collective ideation that we're having around separating ourselves from the old system. And it's very, very cool. And I can't wait for the convergence of them. Like, I'm thinking, what's his last name? He's Frank. He's the permaculture guy, where he's talking about like food forests in your backyard. Looks like
I want to say it's Hoag, Hoag.
Yeah, he's like everybody's biology teacher. You know what I mean? He reminds me of like that guy. Like, I imagine these big creators and these great brains who each have their own like books or podcasts, or they have a successful social media channel. And I can't wait for the convergence. Like, there needs to be a conference, on food.
Get them all in the same place.
Yeah, get them all in the same place, man, and film that shit and put it on the internet, man. Just like a good conversation or great examples, like all in one place. Like that's the internet age, like the millennials.
See, what we really have to do is flood the zone, because it's this like teeter-totter of things. We get all of like the negativity, people yelling, all that stuff gets a lot more clicks. So it's easier for people to fall into those pits. Whereas like we need the balance of that. We need the receipts on the other side to be like, hey, there is a new way to do this stuff, and it's not as hard as it looks. And like we can actually work together, and there's like 75% that we actually agree on. So why don't we stay in that base and like, actually come together as a community? I don't care if Bob and Karen on Facebook are fighting back and forth because they stand on opposite sides of the political spectrum. They're both still going to be at the bake sale. You know what I'm saying?
New story.
Yes, that's it. A new story. And we have the option to craft that literally all the time. And so it just takes, and it's one of those things where it's happening in small places everywhere. It is absolutely happening. So part of the issue is then knowing about it and like, showing the receipts, and it's not as popular or palpable as the negativity, because, that's the stuff that's ready to set on fire really quickly is our hate, anger, fear, and all that stuff, to show people the helpers and the good in the world. That's, it's wet wood. You got to treat it, that sort of thing.
And I think one other thing to add in is like we have to be, to some degree, uniformed. I think we have to really acknowledge a culture and then all say, yes, we're buying into this, right? And that's why we have patches with collectively sustainable. So the people who are have their own, it's called the theory of micro solidarity, right? So the best way to explain it is a football team, offense and defense, special teams. Within offense, you still have positions, quarterback, linemen, running backs have, so all those folks get broken off, right? They're still part of the team. Within the quarterbacks, you'll find that maybe two or three always are they're inseparable, right? So they have the most in common. So that's the concept. The whole team is going for the win, but within the placement and the offensive you still have smaller groups that are so much aligned that they are really inseparable. And that's the concept that we're looking for. So it's not, again, that this idea, we're just going to call it collectively sustainable. We're just going to say collectively sustainable can be the overarching concept, right? It says it all. Collectively we sustain. But in under that umbrella, you still have nuance and diversity and you know, different categories that people fixate on that they think is the truest way to start the sustainability journey, and it's still well respected. But I think we just need to have that overarching team that we represent, and I think it'll be a lot easier for people to see these smaller watersheds popping up, and then if they can link them cognitively, right, with their eyeballs to a logo or, you know, something that represents them, it's going to be easier to conceptualize. Oh, that's what these people do. Oh, I saw those folks growing, you know, oh, I saw them with tuning forks in the woods. Oh, I saw them foraging for mushrooms. I saw them making baskets. And so it's that community. So it's going to give more light to what we're presenting, because it's still, you know, we still have to frame things up. They still have to be digestible, and the way to make things digestible is to understand, to break them apart. And I think that that construct is needed, and that's what we're missing. We're just missing that solidarity, that visual solidarity, that alignment. And I think it's going to be way more impactful if we're all kind of looking the same way in some form or fashion.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And to answer the question in the comments, today's topic is all things divestment. We're talking about well-being, economies, and other ways to get off of the three companies that own everything. And, you know, one thing that we're kind of wrapping around is this idea that, you know, we have, as consumers, we have choices. We also have a power to kind of enter into a new agreement, a new perspective, and like sustain ourselves through actions and whatnot, whether we be bakers and makers like my buddy Farm Fresh 24/7 Lawrence has got a whole world of things going on. I really suggest you follow him for more information about all of that stuff. And, you know, there's this idea of there's so many different ways to do this system differently to craft a better world for ourselves. But it starts, you know, I mean, I feel genuinely it always usually starts with a conversation. We have to know that there is different available for there to, you know, for us to actually be able to make a different choice. And a lot of the time, some people feel stopped by the fact that they feel like they have to reinvent the wheel. They have an idea of a problem that might need to be solved and think that they're the first ones. When in all actuality, there's probably some really good people already kind of working on that idea, and we just don't know where to look for it. And so what part of the biggest issue that we have is showing the receipts. Now, one of the things that came to mind immediately when you were talking, Lawrence, is the idea that every single person has a role to play in the movement. There are those that are like the organizers and the things that do the actual, like, you know, getting the people together and looking and having them look in the same way, getting the people to show up to the rallies and whatnot. But beyond that, there's also, you know, visionaries. There's you know, people in like a healing capacity. There's also people who are there to document, you know, photograph some of the Montgomery boycott bus, you know, pictures and stuff like that are very vital to our history. So that way it isn't forgotten. And so every single person has a role to play. And I think that's important to kind of like just consider, because like that means you have something you can contribute. You may not know what it is, and that's a place to start. And we're hoping to inspire some of that here. So again, thank everybody. I thank everybody who's in the conversation with us, both up in the box and down in the chat. Thank you for being here. What are our thoughts? We're hitting about the halfway point on the first hour, or, you know, we're heading into the second hour or so. I just want to get everybody's gauging how we feeling so far about the concept as it stands.
I like it. I mean, Food is a great place to start, but it's not really the only place, that people need help. But adjacent to what Lawrence was saying, he's like, I got the tools already. Like I have these resources. And so tool share programs are actually amazing ways that's like outside of things that, sustain our bodies. They can sustain our way of life, help us with different projects. And you can do that with a lot of things, not just tools. And this share economy is just one decision away, from being a first mover in somebody's area. And the more of them you get, the more it spreads. And
Absolutely.
then the more ease of access there is. And once you have that kind of traction, it is easier to market it because you do have those receipts right away instead of getting on and saying, this is what we're hoping to do. You get to say, this is what we did. And it's working.
Yeah, excellent. Absolutely.
The internet.
That's always a stronger place to go for.
A lot more.
J.Friday, and I know that you talk about how you found a couple hundred of movements of people doing things differently on a global scale. Would you like to highlight a few that maybe different arenas?
I stopped at 300, and this gets into kind of a left-brained area. So when we're, we want to focus on more stories like Lawrence's because that's what inspires people and they can see their place in it. And it avoids these words, like these 300 movements or 300 different terms. And all of those in one way or another are divisive. Because what we are building, what we are creating, the new world could as easily be called eco-socialism as it could be called conscious capitalism. Even though it would seem those are opposing things. So I stopped at 300. I said, we're all trying to do the same thing. We're trying to create an economy where we have a world where everyone can thrive. That kind of covers all the bases. We all did some research into this, the Wellbeing Economy Alliance. They worked with another a culture organization because this really is about shaping culture. Everything happens downstream of that. They worked with another culture and they found that beyond even using these terms at all, the best thing to do, what audiences responded best to was that definition, an economy that supports all life. And I'd wager from the decades now of storytelling research that I've done and delved into culture science, that just show, don't tell is the best way to go, really. Just show the story, like y'all are calling them the receipts. That's the proof. Because I swear, Missouri, it represents the entire world. It's the show me state. They don't care. That's why when you start a company, you can have the best idea in the world. You can tell somebody, no one cares until it has actually impacted and helped at least one person. If you have helped one person with your idea, then you have a story to tell. And then that's something that can really inspire people. So.
Absolutely. Well said. And that's just it. There's people who want to get involved. I know that I myself a couple years ago felt very much like a dog chasing a car. It's like I want help. I don't know what to do, but I want help. And that was kind of, the way that I feel, some people, especially those who are just kind of waking up to the reality of the situation, who may have been asleep for any number of reasons, the survival grind does kind of keep us nose down, that sort of deal. So, people wake up at different speeds and whatever. And part of this work is kind of, being, for some of us is being able to start that conversation over and over again. Yes, there's things to do. There are responsibilities to carry on this, this new world forward. I can't tell you what your role is. Only you can really figure that out. But for me, I want to be but here are some options. Here are some people doing some really cool things. Are you inspired by them? And and everybody has their own role to play. And the receipts of, once we hit a critical mass of people doing enough different stuff that the status quo actually tries to buck back, because that's going to happen at some point or other. We're going to see some pushback. I'm hoping that the individual communities and locales that we have put our energy into are strong enough to withstand that. Some of them will be, some of them won't. But going forward, it's gonna hit a critical mass, and the perspective will change. It's just gonna take an awful lot of work. People got to roll up their sleeves and be willing to actually carry the water and chop the wood, that sort of deal. So, thank y'all for being here.
I keep imagining And it's what you and I were talking about a couple of years ago, Tripp, this idea of like a unanimous sort of organization where once you start asking the question, what are we doing? What does divestment mean? Oh, we're trying to tell a new story about the citizen. We're building alternative systems outside the old one. There's all these things. But at the end of the day, like, there is an end goal in mind. And I want there to be some coalescence eventually of all these alternative ideas. I love the idea of everybody doing what they do in their little communities, but at the end of the day, why are we doing that? Because there's still a sales pitch that needs to happen to a lot of citizens. If we're talking about the United States in particular, there's a lot of people that still need to be like converted, like you're saying. People wake up at their different speeds. And so painting, like, what are we talking about? What is it that we want the United States to look like? What's the daily life for citizens going to be like? Why are we doing this? And what does it feel like to live in this world? That's what marketing does. That's marketing 101. You know, that it plays with our emotions, and you know, my life would be different if I only had this amazing product. Like, it works. You know what I mean? It works every time. But you know, with this, it's selling a dream that I feel like so many Americans would just love to have some vision. It worked for Trump, clearly. And he didn't even have to paint anything specific. He said that we're just going to make this place great again. People were like, hell yeah. And it's like, well, how exactly are you going to do that? You know, like, what does it look like? What is my life going to look like under this great America? And they often just fall flat on their face, like most politicians. And so with movements like this, I look forward to the day when we get those great storytellers that it's like above all these separate conversations we're having, there is a dream here. There is a vision that's happening, and we're collectively feeling it subconsciously, and what motivates us to do the separate things that we're doing. And I long for the day to where it's tangible, and it has a name, and there's a vision in place that you can really motivate people to participate in this stuff, because it's more than just fuck the man. It's more than that. It's an entire paradigm shift that we're asking for, and it's a big deal, man. And to not have a face, to not have some semblance of like a vision that we're telling, I think is cheapening the whole thing. And it's nobody's fault. It's just maybe a time thing. Maybe it has to mature like some good scotch or something. But I long for that day. I really do.
Are y'all familiar with Simon Squibb and Help Bank?
I know the name.
Yeah, I mean, he's English, but he got homeless when he was 15. I give you the TLDR. He turned to entrepreneurship because he had no other choice. And entrepreneurship now, this is just the same as building a movement, as building organizing. It's getting humans together to solve a problem together to create a system, right? He turned to entrepreneurship to survive. He found out he was really good at marketing. He built a marketing firm. He sold it for like $500 million when he was 40 and retired and never had to work. But something was eating at him, and he wanted other people to get free from the system like he had. So he got here on TikTok, and he started out giving business advice. And then for some reason or another, he tells a story better, but he finally just asked somebody, what's your dream? And so instead of him casting the vision for other people's lives, what it would look like, he started interviewing and asking people what was their dream. And then he started recording that, and he has built that into a company that's a social enterprise. Give all the profits from this company go to fund people's dreams, which they're starting it in the form of a business. He's waking people up to social enterprise, business for a purpose, not profit. 17 million followers now, has changed who knows how many lives by not making it about his dream, but about pointing to other people, like, what's our dream? What's our collective dream? And asking, instead of like waiting for somebody to come up with a vision, waking more people up to what their dream is. And you find that most people, they want to be free of this job that is sucking their soul, and they want to be free to follow their joy and their passion. And those, when they get down to it, sometimes they think they want money, but that's not really what they want. They want freedom and community. And you find that as you go along, once you're motivated enough to, right?
Yep. Yep.
So I feel like our collective dream will emerge as more and more people start waking up and following their joy.
Yeah, Tony, I'm pretty sure you would recognize his face. I'm pretty sure we've sent video, like clips of his back and forth with each other before.
You wouldn't know the deeper story there, what's going on there, how this he's at the bleeding edge of the new world, really, because he's formed this company that's giving away to all its profits to help people. And he's, instead of saying mutual aid, which is kind of a political term, he just said he wants to create a platform to help people help each other. He's also going and talking with 100 millionaires and billionaires like Richard Branson and trying to get them to also get on board to give stuff away for free. So, which is brilliant to me when I saw it, because I know everybody's coming from a place of pain and they're like, it's us versus the 1%. But I think there are more bridges there than we think. And that the people at the top, you might not think it, but maybe need the community and belonging and purpose just as much as we do.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that sentiment, for sure.
I always think of Tom Bilyeu, he runs Impact Theory, but he was the one who started Quest Nutrition. He speaks openly about his fear of Eat the Rich, especially over like the last year. He's like, it keeps me up at night, because he wasn't always wealthy. You know what I mean? He came from, like lower middle class family, and now he's super wealthy. And he's like, I'm just trying to find a way to help out. Like, and there are those people, I think, on the periphery that could absolutely help. It's just, what's the idea? Where are we going? And what's the purpose here? And I think that's another reason why I think unifying this vision and showing people that it's so many different types of people from different places, of different age groups, of different backgrounds, like we're all coming to the same conclusion. So let's paint the picture, paint it, and show people for real. Again, there's that receipt where it's like, despite everything else, we're in on this. And when you have that, it's going to be a lot easier to approach somebody like a Tom Bilyeu and be like, we got some ideas, bro. You in or you out? And I have a feeling there are ones like him who'd be like, I'm in. Hell yeah.
Right.
I snuck into an impact investors meeting with, these really very wealthy people. I wasn't supposed to be in there. I got kicked out, but it was very interesting the few minutes I did get to be in that meeting, with the crazy amounts of money being put into things that further our cause. Really groundbreaking. It's so exciting to see, because yes, if you build something that's inspiring to enough people, there are impact investors now who will get behind it.
It's about speaking the language, which is why a lot on our respective channels, especially mine, I love to talk about how we talk to people. Like if I'm a rock and roll guy and I walk into a room full of jazz musicians, like there's probably going to be a disconnect, like I'm not going to be able to do the thing that we have to do. But, going in, these are people who are successful. They're used to reading business plans. And so when you approach them with the right language, not all, but there'll be a lot more who listen. That's for damn sure, man. And I found that out really quick in my time working alongside local government, was when you go in there, if I talked like I did on the rehearsal floor, or passing something to the left in the backseat of a foggy Cutlass, like, it doesn't work, man. Like, but I had to learn their language. And once I did, you communicate so much more clearly, and these ideas don't get lost in the sauce, and they don't always get rejected either.
And you actually bring up a really good point that I want to address, is the fact that everybody has a different idea in their mind of, like, where this divestment line is. Like, for me, it's the three companies. Anything the three companies are invested in, I don't really want to do, because like they own everything to the point where they own the people in power's retirement funds, and like that's a big freaking no-no for me. But like when it comes to entrepreneurs, the people with means, they're not the people we're divesting from. If they have good ideas to, like, and like it's insight, it's a sort of, you have to maybe the right what's the word I'm looking for? Intent. The right intent, discernment's needed, that sort of deal. But just because a person has wealth of any accumulation doesn't automatically mark them on the other side. And I think that's a really important distinction to make, because like those are allies that we could be potentially like segregating ourselves from if we like hold up that blinder of like, oh, you have that much and you haven't done something already, then F you then. And like, it's like we can't be closing doors like that. We got to keep those kinds of bridges open, because it does take money to make the world go around, and a lot of these ideas take scratch to like actually make happen. So investors like that, the Tom Billius and the other the likes of those people in the world, they play a part just as everybody else, and waking them up to the good ideas that they'd be willing to invest in. Like my whole idea for the Citizens Revival is to get people of that kind of stature to pay for it, so that way I could put their name on the billboard and be like, this was presented by this guy, and make them the Carnegie of our day, basically. And like that, that legacy kind of thing is a big play for people like that, and they could use their funds to do a great many things if they're convinced to do so and they see the vision of it.
100%. Just has to be pitched correctly. And the one thing that I see more often, is the idea of employee-owned companies, and more CEOs, usually younger ones, but more CEOs are coming around to the idea of employee ownership. And these notions will take hold. But again, it's not, to me, it doesn't feel all the way like socialism or communism, or it's like, it feels like something new-ish, or like it deserves its own word. And I think, again, there's that language, where it's like, if I had to approach my grandfather, RIP, with some of the things we talk about, I could see him, I don't know, sounds like communism to me. I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, no, but I mean, history ends up being a gumbo, man, and ideas end up being like gumbo, and like there's just a whole bunch of shit and different shit in there, man. A little bit of this, a little bit of that, and I'm excited about it. But again, I'm sensing, like, we talk about co-ops, food co-ops, tool sharing programs, libraries, summer camps, education programs, all outside the system, and all these things, and it's like, well, what's it called, guys? We need a team captain, or at least a mascot or something, which is what I like what Lawrence was saying. It's like, it needs to happen.
It does. It absolutely does. And like another idea that's kind of in the same realm that we have not discussed yet is like a time bank, which for those of people who don't know, the time bank is the idea is like you have a skill set. Like say you're really good at carpentry, right? So you offer that up at the time bank. You need your taxes done at the end of the year, and there's an accountant in the time bank. So basically you book them for that, and then like they say they need their stairs repaired. And so it's the idea of skill sharing, and instead of banking on the money that you would make in that transaction, you're going to get a different kind of good or service. And it doesn't have to be a direct like A to B transaction. You could get your taxes done by the dude, and then go make a chicken coop for somebody else, and then they sell eggs to the guy. Like it's all like communicative and that sort of deal. And so like there's ways to do it. There's so many different ways to do it. And like
that's already
you're right,
what's happening though, right?
We need words for it. We need important words for it.
It's just like, it's like the middleman. The middleman got in the way and was like, you definitely need me. And it's like, do we though? I'm starting to question whether or not you're actually needed in this conversation there, buddy. Like,
it's the administration that is at fault here. To some extent. They are a superfluous arm of the society. Not saying that administration is never needed, it's just that it is overblown. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and actually that's why I'm so excited this summer as well, because again, this next initiation of our movement here in Atlanta is really going to put eyes on us, and is really, again, painting the pictures what we've been declaring that we're going to do this year, this season, and we're already acting. So that dimension, that portal, that next life that we're already looking for, we're actually living it here for sure. We're bartering things like childcare for automobile repairs. I have bread delivered.
We have handmade clothing coming in, or restitched. Like we're doing a lot of the things that we're saying are going to be available in the new world. And again, like more emphasis on family and friends and downtime and rest and joy and happiness. But it's coupled with inconvenience sometimes. Like we have to understand that this next echelon that we're calling for, we might have to be inconvenienced. It might not be that fast. And again, I'm really excited because we're going to be showing that on Front Street, what we're doing here in Atlanta, in hopes to be that model for people to say, hey, they're doing it and they didn't get a grant. They didn't get a subsidy. They didn't get an angel investor. They didn't get a divestor. They were doing it with what they had, because we really have to understand that we are the resource. Once we realize that, like, money is the middleman, right? The fiat is the middleman. And fortunately for us, the fiat is looking shaky. So a lot of people are looking for something more solid. They're looking for something to stand on. And I'm just saying, it can be your neighbor, right? It could be the person who is doing the car fixing in the driveway. It could be the person who does have the backyard garden. And we're really enacting on that resource mapping. So with Collectively Sustainable, I'm really nature boy. So I'm not up to a lot of technological advancements, but my team and our community is catching me up and making things known that are available. And so now the biggest thing that we had was people coming in and saying, hey, where do I fit in? How do I bring my specific skill, my specific interest, the thing that brings me peace and joy or happiness in the morning or productivity? How do I insert it into this movement? And so we have basically a bot, a chat bot, whatever we're doing, but it's being configured to kind of take the person's lifestyle, their habits. Are they a solo person or a group person? Do they like to be outside versus indoors? Are they creative? Are they logistic? And we're kind of carving out the lanes where they can buy into the culture of the community. So we're removing that barrier of, hey, how do I fit? Where do I go? Once you come in and you fill out this form, it's going to spit out, hey, based on your birthday and where you are, you should be doing this for the community because this is aligned heavily with your DNA. So it's going to be wonderful. Again, 2020, this summer is up. It's up for real.
I have questions. Do you mean that you're using astrology to determine what people should be doing? Right on.
For real. Yeah, for real.
Might as well.
All these things at our fingertips that we like, why don't they use this? Why don't they? And now we have an opportunity. As the adults in the room, are we going to not use astrology? Are we not going to act like the zodiacs aren't real? Are we not going to? So it's like, yeah, here we are using everything at our disposal to throw it into this mixture and create this new culture. And I believe this is going to be very significant because that's the main question. How do I fit in? And now we're going to be able to produce these pathways forward for people.
Word. I can totally dig it. Well, I mean, it's like we are standing on the shoulders of all the information that came before us. We're standing on, cultures and knowledge that we have. I mean, there's so much knowledge in the world that we've forgotten a lot of it. You know what I mean? And there's a big conversation that's not akin to this that, we've lost it intentionally, colonization and things like that. But, we have the power as the adults in the room now to bring those elements back in, revitalize, come up with new words, new verbiage for what this new system is, because the old language is like tainted with a bunch of ideas and connotations, and some people just hearing the word activates the red scare lizard brain in their in the back of their heads. And so we need, part of this movement is having new language to use so that way people can see the vision that some people will be able to craft. So I feel like there's visionaries among us that have they have their ideas. They may not be able to articulate them very well. It's not, their wheelhouse isn't necessarily shared with social media and things. But there's people with ideas, showcasing those as part of the work. But that future, that outlook is going to be determined by how we take the elements of the knowledge that we stand on and synthesize it to try new things. And like we have to get creative. Some people around the world have already done so and they're doing really great things, but doesn't mean that those are the only options. There's still a bunch of things to try, and anytime we can meet a need or a want or desire or what have you outside of purchasing it from one of the three big companies, then that is what divestment's all about. And, making that choice again and again and again as a collective, because like you start like me personally, I haven't shopped on Amazon or eaten at Chick-fil-A since, I don't know, like 2016, something like that. It's been a long time for me for either of those two things. But me doing that alone barely made a dent. But as more and more people get off of the idea of like, yeah, Amazon may be convenient, but like it's killing the ecosystem, what have you, whatever your passion is, it's not fair to the workers and all that kind of stuff. Like whatever gets you to make a different choice. Doesn't matter what pushes you in that direction, but making a different choice and deciding to go with something more local over Amazon is a powerful move. And the more times you make it, the more powerful it becomes. And the more people who make those types of decisions, now we're talking great waves of change. And it's really, really like that.
Do y'all know of Mike Jones, Neighborhood Share?
Yes, I do know that name.
You do know Mike Jones. Well, I mean, and Neighborhood Share is just one example of an app that allows you to divest. But he was telling me when I first met him, he told me he came upon the idea for this app because he's from Northern California, and I reckon there's just all these gigantic. I just picture all these gigantic houses. And he just described to me all his camping equipment and everything. I'm just imagining a garage full of stuff that gets touched once a year, right? So
you're not wrong. You are not wrong.
So he's like, everybody is, they need something. They're going down to the Home Depot and they're buying something that 10 of their neighbors probably have one, within 10 meters, that there are 10 of them that they could go get. So it just, so if we can make that, and if anybody gets one of these apps to take off where it's as easy as Amazon, and he said the other point of it, he said, the point isn't like just resource sharing, which is really important for de-inflating those three companies, right? But it's also, he said, this gives you a chance, an excuse to actually connect with your neighbor. Because I talk to so many people on a daily basis. I'm guilty of of sitting back and being afraid to knock on that door, to make that phone call, because we have become so hyper individualized. And I made a post here on TikTok a while back, and I basically said, just to get that phone call that you've been thinking about making, that you haven't, go do it. And somebody came and told me after that video prompted them to reach out to this neighbor because they wanted to do something in the community. Come to find out, the neighbor had been thinking about this also for 6 months, too scared to reach out. So just reminder for everybody that's listening, just connect. We're working on the apps to make that easier. We know you're shy, but you can do it. You can do it in the meantime.
Tripp, you're muted.
Can't hear you, Tripp.
Thank you. There's a piece of writing that Tony and I are working on where, at one point the character says if, God, I wish I remember how it went. If somebody is too scared to knock on their neighbor's door, is that agency or compliance? And it's like that's something to really sit and think on and stew on, because the idea of they are right there. In fact, a wonderful person on this platform, his name's Tim. He works this idea called longer tables. They're doing a mile-long table at the end of July here in Denver. I'm super excited. I've already got my tickets. I'm going. It's going to be a super great time. The idea is you can bring a friend, but you can't sit next to your friend. You have to sit somewhere else on the table and make new friends. You can't talk about work. You got to talk about your passions and other things. And he has questions and stuff that you can ask. But it's because breaking bread is so common, his idea is to get people to communicate and be in community together over a meal. And so, and he does a whole thing where it's he pairs with local restaurants. So it's all fresh and organic and freshly made and all that kind of stuff. It's a really cool gig. I got to crash the party last year when he did 528 feet. And so this year he's doing 5,280, which is a mile-long table. And it's a whole stunt. And it's a great idea. And it's he's getting people from all over the city. Probably busting people in for this one too. But it's one of those, it's an idea. And I think that events are something we have not talked about yet that I do want to spend a little bit of time on, because giving people things to do is one of the best ways to get them in community with each other. Breaking bread, good food and music, as Tony likes to say. So like, you know, just that idea of like putting people in the same space and giving them something fun to do, preferably where they don't have to spend the money, because, you know, this economy is hard and that kind of thing and blah, blah. So if you can get them in a space where it's free, great. If it's not going to be free, make sure that you sell it as like such value to be there, that sort of deal. Because that, yeah, the block parties, those kinds of things, we need to bring that into this century, because like we don't do that anymore, and it's a damn shame.
I know a few college campuses, at least back in my day, that did, and they were pretty cool. One thing I did want to bring up as I was looking up things to discuss on tonight's panel was the idea. There's an organization from Cleveland, Ohio called Evergreen, and their business model is to acquire multiple businesses. And when I first read that, it gave me like a jump scare. I'm like, all right, anytime I hear acquire business, I'm like, all right, I immediately am your enemy. But what they do is they acquire them and then take them through the process of becoming employee owned. And so when we talk about community efforts and cooperation, we oftentimes think of production, because that's a huge part of the human story, is like we're producing things. But I think there's, for a time, a very necessary component of acquiescence. So like we're acquiring large cul-de-sacs to fight against Blackstone buying up all these single family homes. Like if you can get, you know, just, there's varying levels of people's ability, you know, whether they have financial mobility or physical mobility. It's all different for everybody, right? But the idea of trying to fight back against the massive acquisition that's happening against us is to sort of push back, you know, as a citizen collective, which I think could be really powerful too. I'm just trying to think of all the different camps that people can live in the world of divestment, and acquisition isn't one that's talked about enough. Like the closest I hear is like, yeah, me and my friends have talked about buying a plot of land and building a commune for years. I'm like, yeah, your friend group and mine and theirs and theirs and theirs. Like if you're like, I don't know, sane, that's probably been talked about in your friend circle. But the next level to that is acquisition. It's like getting enough of us to have a big enough pool to fight back in a real way, not just land. Again, businesses, right? That might be mid-level businesses, maybe not mega corporations, maybe someday. But I think buying them up and taking them through a process of becoming employee owned is a brilliant strategy. I really do.
Just follow the Cody Sanchez model, because all of those small businesses in your small town are getting bought out by private equity. Right. And that's...
Yep, absolutely. I do want to say that I'll say real quick, I want to thank everybody who's sitting in the room with us and having this conversation, both people in the box and the people down sitting in the comments and listening. We really appreciate you being here. This is a space, you know, where we're talking about the how of, you know, how we move forward. And I hope you all are inspired. To Tony's point, there, you know, acquisition, definitely, I think that that's one of those terms that is like dripping with connotation. People hear acquisition and they think, you know, big business and private equity and all of those sorts of things. But like, we have to be able to take a page from their book in order to be successful. Like we have to, you know, like we can't just throw the baby out with the bathwater because we've seen it do evil things. Like that idea has the potential to be adapted. I mean, you know, like, it's going to take many great minds and the people who are passionate in just the right areas to really kind of alchemize it and come up with something new. But I really do believe that it's possible. And somebody in the comments earlier said, you know, we can take a lot of lessons from the Amish, because I mean, like, they do have that sort of business acumen. I know that they sell heaters and all kinds of stuff that they actually, you know, depending on which community you're talking about. But, you know, they've set up that sort of the way for themselves as well. So like, we can look to examples like that and try and bring about a new concept, take the framework and put it in the century and try to do new stuff with it. Like, we can get creative. Like, that's really what I just want to imply to anybody here. Like, all it takes just a little bit of like thinking out, you know, outside the box, getting creative. Try it. You don't know what'll work, and if it doesn't, then try something else, you know?
And that's where I'm like, again, a blend of capitalism, a blend of this, a blend of that. It's like all these things are going to be swirling around, and they're going to try to be like, but wait, and it's like red scare, or I don't know what capitalism would be, blue scare. I don't know what's coming. But again, acquisition, I'm cool with somebody coming in and saying, you know what? I'll put in this amount of money with 5% off top, 10% off top. Somebody loans me $100 to make some dreams come true for other people, but they want 110 back. Again, I know, Lawrence, we're talking about fiat again, but I'm talking about this purgatory transition as we're going. It's a real component to what we're dealing with. I think that's cool, and I think it's like maybe one of the only ways we'll be able to talk people into buying up these cul-de-sacs and not just jacking up the prices for their fucking portfolios. You know what I'm saying? Is like turn this around to make livable housing for people, and don't do the same thing that Blackstone's doing. And off top, we'll make sure that you get some kind of percentage on the back end or some sort of incentive to do it if you're not going to do it from the graciousness of your heart. So I like the idea. Jason had said something with real estate. So it's like, let's think about acquisition in terms of housing and businesses. Again, like J.Friday brought up, they're already getting bought up by private equity. It's already happening. And then they're unifying the system. So when you call the air conditioning guy on one side of town, he's already linked into the same system as the guy on the other side of town. So back in the day, you'd call both of them to get pricing. Oh, well, John's usually cheaper. Not no more. They're all in the same systems, and that's because of private equity, right? And it's such a travesty because if these things are sleeper, it's like sleeper stuff that people aren't picking up on. That's slowly degrading the quality of life here in our economy. So the idea of acquisition, I think, isn't talked about enough. Whether that's from one or two wealthier people who are in that position, or a collective group of people who want to go in on some of these things. Create a foundation that's specifically for it. Create a nonprofit if you need to. Like, there's so many ways for people to help outside of just being a producer, which both are equally important, but it's just one that I wanted to make sure we touched on today because I thought that was fascinating.
You're absolutely right, my friend. In the chat, we have some people talking about DAOs, and that does remind me that another person in the camp is Michael. I can't remember is it I can't remember what Michael's DAO is named. What his but like it's a project that he's been working on kind of as a way to get people using the same. Huh?
Michael Muya.
Yeah, his DAO. What's the DAO?
Apex DAO.
Apex DAO. Yeah. So he the same dude we try to do the grill with, not the Michael I'm talking about, Tony. He's been working on.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
He's been working on the Apex DAO, which was this idea that he had at the time, and like it went like way over my head because the finance stuff is like mustard acid in my brain. But like to see him kind of kicking it off and doing the thing, and it's another one of those like it's a solution for the people kind of thing. And so like DAOs, I think are really important. Do you have any information about the Apex DAO, J.Friday, that you could share with us, please?
Quick rundown on Michael is that he formed one of the first DAOs in the US, which is it's a bit complex. I think less so now, especially with AI. I'm not sure what Apex DAO specifically, what problem it solves in the world, but I know that Michael has authored a book on regenerative economic zones and recreating those, because it's really not just about one business or one initiative or one person. It's about entire regions coordinating together, right? You also see this with bioregional weaving. Community wealth building is about an ecosystem of anchor institutions in a place. All these things are kind of pointing at the same thing. Anyway, he wrote a book on that, and he is right now upskilling people with AI skills because that can really accelerate our ability to coordinate, to have the skills to carry out these projects. Because I've been in this a while, and there's a fella I know out of Alaska, and he was telling me there are all these many hundreds of $1 million projects out there that would go, that people who could build these projects in a regenerative way, in a green way, would get these projects, because now that is actually more lucrative, not only for us, the planet, but also the investors. But one, the investors, their knowledge, they're still thinking green costs more. And two, there aren't enough people with the skills to actually deliver the projects. We don't have enough people with the skills. And so the private equity, all these people on this side, that system, I don't even think it's the people, they're just in the system, right? That systems keeps going because there aren't enough people with skills building the alternative, with business skills and with the ability and capacity to carry out these big projects. So
yeah. I mean, I've seen inspired individuals doing what they can in their area. I see people who in areas like they get hit by hurricanes, deciding that they're going to help rebuild the homes in their area and things like that, like taking real initiative on the ground where they're at to help change the lives of the people around them. And so and that, I mean, it's not sexy and it's not lucrative and it's not an investment sort of portfolio, but it is the work happening in real time. And so with projects that because when it comes to green and renewable energies 15-20 years ago, it wasn't lucrative. It has now become way cheaper because that's what happens over time. So that's sort of a progression of it. The cost of materials and the knowledge base it takes to make those materials, they've also become more efficient over time and cheaper. So the old world idea that it was just more expensive is kind of a passé one, but people need the skills and the resources and the knowledge in order to move forward in those sustainable practices, wind, solar, and other forms of energy consumption and whatnot. I know that a couple, maybe a month ago or so, there was a super viral video making its rounds about the guy who finally distilled plastic into gasoline and would put it in the car and turn the car on and everything like that. And it was just wildly, I haven't heard from that guy. I hope somebody checks on him. I hope he's okay. That's basically what I'm saying. But people are having these ideas everywhere. The collective unconscious is absolutely boiling with the fact that we need a change, we need a shift. And meanwhile, while we're trying to do these divestment tactics and whatever, the other, the ones who have the power now are trying to keep it. And so there's that idea, if we don't stand up and make these changes and do these different things, then we're going to backslide into a completely different situation we don't want to be in. So, it takes a certain level of activation on a personal level and passion and inspiration, and then just get together with the people in your neighborhood and try and solve a problem. And it can be any problem, because once you start, it's a slippery slope, man. Once you start solving problems, you just keep finding them and solving them, and they keep getting bigger and bigger. I've seen it myself. I've been on that road myself.
Absolutely.
Jason says he's seen the
caveat.
Go ahead.
I want to just throw that in, because that natural awakening is basically an educational framework, so that can be a part of economy, right? So again, that's kind of where I come in as far as Seals Family Farm, our actual farm. We were going in to just produce the things, and then we realized that a lot of people want to learn them. So instead of producing them and trying to just work the land continuously to pump out crops, we started to empower our community, and thus we created our own infrastructure. So I think the people with those nuanced capabilities, solar, regenerative ag, baking bread, making deodorant, conflict resolution, all those little things that we're saying are necessary for this next dimension, this next paradigm, we can now make it a monetization so we can sustain. And it's not like a horrible capitalistic monetization. We're saying that, hey, you can divest from the system by investing into yourself and your local economy, by learning something and paying somebody in your area to teach you that skill. And again, that's part and parcel of the whole move, because you're now in contact with somebody in your hyperlocal arena who you're building connections with, who you're probably going to have in your community, and thus strengthening your bonds and your assertion forward to the new paradigm.
One of the things people skip about crypto is the ability to tokenize all this stuff. And, back in the day, the states each printed their own money. And I'd like to continue living, so I won't go too far down that rabbit hole publicly. But once upon a time, and that's a power move, man. It really is. So the idea of being able to tokenize our efforts, our time, our brains, our bodies, whatever we're contributing, is huge. And maybe finding a way to tokenize it with something unique on the blockchain is smart.
Lots of people working on that problem. Dead Bunny 999 says use community growth instead of divestment. Change the paradigm, which I think it's been trickling in the back of my mind here. And Tripp, ever since you sent me like the sheet for what we're going to be talking about, because divestment has a similar feeling as degrowth. I don't know if y'all know about the degrowth movement. Everybody has a problem with the name because it's just not inspiring, because we feel it in our bones, the etymology of these words. Die means separation, and de is against. We want something that is empowering, inspiring, that we're creating and growing, right? That's where we're going to flock to. So, I'm sorry to.
I agree. No. I do definitely agree with you. This is the part in which, language does matter, and like the feelings that we get from these words are not insignificant. However, I will say that the private equity as a whole, but BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street, we do need to be divested from. And like the important thing is like, as long as they literally have their clutches, like, 6 to 10 companies own all of the food production or what have you, blah, blah, but behind the scenes, it's all just like a shell game. Like that is in essence, I don't want to say something as harsh as the enemy, but it is like the opposition, as it were. And so like, there's, you're right. There's better, more positive terms to think about this in, but at the end of the day, taking the power away from those who have been most powerful and only accumulated more, divestment fits for that, for me personally. I think
let's not give them our energy.
I like that change in language because it puts divestment on the other side of the equal sign and not the verb of the sentence. Because community growth, it requires divestment. Like the end result is if with enough proper community growth, you will have successfully divested from the class, right? That we're talking about, the class of businesses that we're talking about. And it's because divestment in and of itself is a pretty vague term, just like we've found out here. We started with the term divestment and then look at the what do they call that? A factor tree. It looks like one of those things from math. It just like spreads into all these various conversations. And so does community growth. And so if they both lead to that same gigantic factor tree of variability, then, maybe it is good to use the positive one, because community growth is, community focus is the goal. I mean, where else are you going to buy from? So it's almost like you need that community growth first, but it's also tricky because like the process of building those pipelines of accessibility for products and services also is the act of divestment. Yeah. But not fully, because then you still need the consumer base to participate in those systems that you've created to like, that's the 1-2 punch. Like you can hit them with we're going to create our own ecosystems of productivity and the tokenization of our time. But the follow through to knock it out is the participation.
Absolutely. And I just, there's that idea of like, not everybody thinks alike. And for those who will be turned off by the negative, there are those who are, the type that's living for spite that might be spurred by it. And so like, offering the same conversation in different fonts and flavors is absolutely what we want to do, because, the people who hear community growth and are inspired by that are going to start acting in those ways. There's other people who like that, it's not going to ring true for them, because, maybe they don't have the same idea of what community is because of a world that, is their perceptional lens. So in that case, the idea is to offer up this idea in as many different phrases and concept as possible. So that way people from all walks of life can be like, oh, I get it. Let me contribute in this way, and I think that, that's one of the reasons why I try to have such a diverse panel of people in, to have sit here and talk with me, because there's people here in this room that may not really get it the way that I'm saying it, but the way that one of y'all say it is going to click. And so that's, part of the conversation is just, allowing for this space where the creative language, the new vision, and the crafting of the synthesizing of the old world and all these different types into something new, it's gonna sound like something different in different circles. And that's beautiful. I love it.
So what
I'm gonna
about
be honest.
storytelling? Who's the villain here? So if we like divestment, all these community growth, these are really abstract concepts, right? But
Right.
if people building the new system, we're the underdog heroes in the story, who's the villain?
Convenience.
I mean,
Our own bad habits. Yeah, we thought the same thing. Our own bad habits, 100%.
the creature
Convenience,
comforts that
1000.
we have come to rely on for a sense of like this like level of what we consider free lifestyle, you know, the creature comforts and things. Yeah, our own apathy, I think, is really in complacency. Yeah. Good words, guys. Lots of good words down here.
And I was gonna jump
I feel
in too
like
because
y'all
I
are
think
calling everybody lazy.
hey, it's some things that if it walk like a duck and quack like a duck, man, we got to name the name. And the whole thing is, I was just going to jump in on the vocabulary. So I'm a South Side player, man, to the end of me. And I've been learning a lot in these organizational spaces. And I've been learning a lot of vocabulary and a lot of nuance here. One thing I learned is the greatest trick is in the words too. And I believe that like once we start to get some steam rolling, like, okay, for instance, I'm going to give y'all a real life sustainability was something that I was looking for. And that was a top tier word maybe 3 years ago. Now it's regenerative. Now it's like, oh, you're sustainable, but you're not regenerative. And I'm like, they use these words as well as ways to be divisive and ways to continually move the goalposts. Again, I say you measure a man by what you see him do with his hands. I think the verbiage is an offset. And this is just me personally, y'all. Forgive me for all my wordsmiths out there and folks who love the vocabulary. I'm just saying we have to do something. Like Tony, I get what you're saying. We got to name it. We got to name it to claim it. But God, can we just settle on a name and just stick with it and not have different iterations every 3 months and every move? I think we just need to
100%.
call it what it is and let's goddamn get to work, man. Folks is just, I think that's a little bit too much, too mouthy.
Paint it on the picture. You know what I'm saying? And then show people. I don't care what it's called. You know what I'm saying? Like, I agree with you, man. Like the name, but the receipt.
I think there's definitely a space where intellectuals tend to get like caught up on the wrong part of the problem, you know, which usually is naming it or whatever, what have you. And like, yeah, sometimes you've got to bear down, roll up your sleeves and actually do the work. Once the project is over and all that stuff, the name might just kind of like come out of it, you know, like we may not actually have a word for this until 50 years down the road when the thing has completely changed and somebody who hasn't even been born yet is going to be the ecologist that actually puts the real name to it. And at this point, what it's called doesn't actually matter. Having something that people can like think about and conceptualize in a new way that would bring hope and inspiration, absolutely important. Absolutely important. But like, don't tie yourself or like, you know, spend the energy on what's going to be the snazzy thing that catches people's attention, because people seeing helpers in the moment do the work is going to definitely catch attention. And that's what we really need, you know? So
And that's
yeah,
what
an
it used
organic
to
name.
mean to be like a Boy Scout, you know, or you know, when somebody says I'm a paramedic, it means something in a crisis situation. You know what I mean? And so it's like when somebody's like, you know, what are you guys doing over here? Oh, we're from this, you know. And it's like being a Freemason used to like really mean something to that generation. You know, those people who were active in the community, the Odd Fellows, Kiwanis, Rotary, like it meant something to them, you know, and then they felt proud to say it. And I think standing for something is really scary in the 21st century because we've seen a lot of shit go down. And it feels weird to be like, you know what, I stand in solidarity with this, only for 90 days later to be like, I was just joking. I don't know those guys. Fuck. You know what I mean? Like, it sucks. And I'm super 100% serious. It's like, we're tired of being fucking played by these movements and groups of people only to find out that whatever happened on the back end and people were being people about it. It's like frustrating. But at some point, you know, I think we have to take ownership and stand for something too. Like, but that standing for something is through the work that's being done, not just a name. And when it comes to naming things, I always remind people that there's a really successful band out there, and their name is Korn. You know, and they're world renowned. Doesn't really matter what you call them. At the end of the day, like if people like it, they're gonna like it. So it's through action. But I do like the idea of a new a new wave, even if it's not a political party, but some kind of like organization like those old community organizations. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like
Right.
those Freemason, you know, some of them were like religious in their foundation, but there's some of them weren't. And, you know, I think that's powerful too. That might be a cool way to do that, because what we're all talking about is starting something in one place and having it pop up in another. And those chapter fraternity type organizations, that was like, that was their basic function, was to spread. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I wonder how many new organizations like that have been registered in the last 10 years.
It's a really great question. I think that honestly, it kind of ties into the idea of, you know, when we talk about like the whole idea of like our generation having failure to launch, and like, you know, the concept of us not really realizing we are the freaking adults in the room, kind of comes with the idea of like taking to the Kiwanis, the Rotary Club, the VFWs, like those kinds of institutions that have been there for, you know, 60, 80, 100 years or what have you. And like you know, we constantly talk about like, if you don't like the way they do it, then do it a different way, revitalize it, bring back something new, you know, name it something new, bring a whole new society. And I bet if we like went and looked on like a national level, there might be a few that started in the last 10 years. And depending how long ago they started and where they stand now, it's probably the same idea of like, we just don't know what they're doing because it's so granular in their own community. And nobody's filming the receipts of this thing, you know, like that kind of deal. Like my mom started a senior organization, like, you know, friends of the senior citizens kind of thing, 4 or 5 years ago. And like they've been on the ground doing really great stuff for like a community of, you know, maybe 300 to 400 like, you know, senior citizens in this township. And, you know, like, you know, really helping them out with, you know, giving them experiences and that kind of deal. And then, you know, because of that, they were also able to help. I don't know if anybody saw my video recently, but there was a police officer that was shot and killed in Bloomfield, and the whole county came out. My mom's organization helped build this fundraiser. They raised $23,000 for the family, so that way, you know, they can you know, get back on their feet and that kind of deal. And it's like that kind of community coming together. Unfortunately, I had to show it in such a bad circumstance. You know, nobody wants to do it over tragedy. We want to do it for really great things. But like, that's the kind of coming together that we can only see on like the community level. You know what I mean? Like, or that we see much more clearly on the community level. And so that's when people have this broad scope of, you know, people are too focused on like the big national stage when we are just a collection of nation states, and you should be more localized and, you know, what you're doing with boots on the ground. All pieces play a part. Being able to see what's happening on the ground in another region may inspire movement. But it's the idea is just to, I'd say once you start looking for the helpers, you end up seeing more helpers. Now, real quick, we just crossed into, it's been an hour and 45 minutes of this conversation. I want to thank every single person that's up here. I want to offer anybody in the comment section, if you guys want to come up and ask a question, and we're going to take about 15, 20 minutes to do so. Right now, we're just going to go ahead and continue the conversation. But if you want to go ahead and request as a guest, I'll have you come up for about 5 minutes or so and ask your question. You can also just type them down there in the comments as well. No pressure, no nothing. I just figured I'd open up the space to if anybody has anything specific to say. And again, thank everybody for being here for this wonderful conversation. We're only going to be going for about 45 more minutes or so. So I also want to preface the people in the room to start thinking about your last words, because we'll be hitting that in about 15 minutes. Getting back to it though, I love the idea. I love where this conversation has gone. Because, like, you know, yeah, we started up at this high, lofty idea of all things divestment and got to a space where divestment isn't really even the word anymore. Plus, like, you know, just all this nuance and stuff. So thank you, guys. This is the kind of stuff that I just love.
Me too. It's going to force people to be creative in ways that feel scary. You know, like if you've ever been a small business owner, tried to start your own thing like that, it's incredibly intimidating and humbling. And that's really the sort of space that we're in right now, is watching people forge a new path. And when you do that, it comes with a whole series of trials and tribulations. And I think that scares a lot of folks because the rails that are there might have we might have our gripes with the current system. But by and large, it keeps a lot of people going every day. And what we're asking people to do in exiting one habit and way of life and trying out something new is that fear of launching, which leads to a failure to launch. And so I think there's a lot of inspiration to be gleaned from these conversations, not just because, hey, we're sticking it to the man. It's no, people are taking some autonomy in their life and they're saying, I'm not going to have this thrusted upon me anymore. This is my life, damn it. And I want this for me. And once you have that epiphany, you realize how many other people deserve it too, which the correct answer to that is all of them. And I just think that that's a huge piece of inspiration when we talk about divestment, because it's not just a political movement. It's a self-awareness campaign and a claiming of human sovereignty. I believe it's that important. I really do. Those might be my last words. I mean,
we ain't there yet, Tony. I'm sure you'll have more. But you're right. And, you know, it's part of the puzzle because, like I said earlier, everybody's on a different stage of waking up to this idea. Some people have been in the trenches for, 20 years and, feel like they have a real grip on, like, their lane. And that's great. And there's people who woke up just yesterday and they're just like, I just want to help. And for everybody along those various lanes and levels, there's a place for you to get involved. And, for the more seniors, I would just like to urge anybody who's been working in these lanes for, I'd say anywhere over than 10 years, think about showing your work a little better. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that people don't do it. I'm just saying that, like, we have to combat the clickbaity stuff. The stuff that gets people angry and enraged and, yelling at each other online. That's the stuff we're trying to combat. And one of the best ways to do it is to show people what good community work can actually be like. Show them the helpers, because once they start seeing it, they'll see it everywhere. At least, if they give that attention to it. I really do believe that's true.
Absolutely. It's so much about us collectively reclaiming our agency. You see this if you get into entrepreneurship. Our entrepreneurship is an agency leveling up system, right? But I can give you, because I think I'm speaking a lot more to the activist space than the social entrepreneur space here. But I could give you actionguide.localfutures.org, and I could give you shareable.net, and it's got lots of starting points and guides to start. But you have got to go knock on the door, figure out how to get people together and do it. Everybody wants a blueprint. They're just waiting for this perfect blueprint to fall into their laps. That doesn't happen. Every single business, every community is completely different challenges, different problems, different strengths that they have. It's a beautiful, diverse and dynamic system that you're creating wherever you start or wherever you fall in. And sorry, you got to figure it out. You got to take the action. But just start.
Right. Yeah, that's the hardest part, is getting people to start. I mean, whether we're talking about someone who's like, I've always wanted to learn how to play piano, all the way up to, being an impact in a new direction for society. It's one of the most difficult things for people to do, which is why I think it's important to use the word inspiration. Like, it's one of two ways. Like Lawrence said, I think it was Lawrence who said earlier, it's like once things get so bad, the universe sort of forces you into this. There's one of two ways this goes down. That gets worse and more people get on board, or you inspire them to make this change. And I'm really hoping that we see a bigger movement of inspiration, which I think is happening here. There's a whole corner of TikTok, and I'm sure we don't all align on every single political point, but damn sure we align on a lot of this stuff, which is the potatoes, and that's a super inspiring place that shouldn't exist in theory. Like, we shouldn't be able to do this on the internet, and here we are. I haven't heard a single mic drop yet.
No, because when we're trying to work in cooperation as opposed to competition with one another, many great things can happen. And there's no mic drop needed. The idea is that we, as a collective, like, because human beings are social creatures. We work better when we are in groups of people. Even those who feel the most introverted, we can't make life happen. Or like life would be hella dull if it was just literally you for all of time. And so like the spice of it is these other beings entering and like being able to sit in community with them, break bread, solve a problem, do something that helps all of the people, all of you have some sort of better quality of life. That's a small, like, it's just a step in the right direction. And once you start walking that path, the sky's the limit. Whatever you and that group of friends want to do and have done, you can take those matters into your own hands, and we can change this world in so many different ways if we just like focus on where our end goal is. Don't be so rigid to your dream and idea that if it doesn't happen the exact way, then you're going to cry about it or just destroy the whole thing. The idea is to be malleable, but we have the opportunity to envision something better, take a single problem, whether it be food, shelter, water, the infrastructure, the fiat systems, what have you, whatever you're passionate about. Take that one idea and just try to think of a solution that isn't being done yet. Try it out. You may find some successes. You may fall flat on your face and, have to start from square one again. But that's kind of the point of it all, like of life and existence, is to like try and try again. Walk your dreams, even when people think they're completely like ridiculous and foolhardy. Because when you do end up proving that this thing that you've hoped for forever is at least a modicum of possible, then you're going to, not only inspire others to do stuff, but, open up the possibility for change, just general change. And that's what we all are really just hungry for right now. So might as well get creative and try.
What would be the reason that people don't want to go knock on those doors? Let's think about it. Like, boil it down to a really simple thing here. It's like, we don't trust people. We assume things about them. And a lot of times it's not even that you're afraid these people are going to like pose some physical threat to you. It's just we don't have any tolerance for people who don't already align with us on a linguistic or vibe or cultural level. It's like we have a hard time tolerating other types of personalities. And I feel like that is a deterrent for a lot of people. And the one thing I've noticed in all my travels is like, all you got to do is compliment somebody. And that seems so, and this matters to divestment because we need groups of people to pull this off. And if you have groups of people that by the sheer numbers of it, okay, like there's going to be people there you don't align with, like vibrationally or whatever, right? And so we forget the power of kind words. And I just wanted to throw that in because there's a lot of this, we know that one of the big resistances to community growth is this sentiment that people have that people suck. On my channel, I've always said, like, human beings aren't trash bags, man. But in a lot of different circles, you hear people talk so poorly of humanity because of the negative stream of information we're fed all the time. And so I think one of the huge components that need to be discussed is like tolerance for people that don't automatically align with you on the outset, on the face. And it's, and as long as they're not posing a physical threat to you, then I think we all need to sort of put on our big boy and big girl pants and deal with that shit.
See, I think that we can go at this from a couple different ways. We can look at it generationally, because I think there is kind of a sliding scope of like social anxiety the younger you get, because people, and I've talked about this before, but the idea of like certain ages are, they've grown up in a world where people randomly, because of, something they do, a dance or, something embarrassing, become like the ridicule of the world for like 15 minutes, maybe 2 weeks or whatever. And then we move on and it becomes something different. Futurama did a really great episode about this. But like, it's that idea of like people of a certain age are terrified of being seen in such a way that they're afraid to do anything. And I think one of the biggest hurdles for that generation to overcome is the ability to act without, fear of like social repercussions. Because like, it's easy to be made a mockery of online. However, like that's just one space and it's not even reality. But for, for people, and like it includes some millennials and, and younger, but like for some people, they really feel physically affected by the idea that they could be ridiculed by people they don't know. And so and I feel like there's a graduation of thought that happens for everybody, and it's at different ages. There's not like a concrete set psychology thing about this, but at some point we do recognize that the whole world that we think is thinking about us just thinking about themselves. Nobody really gives a fuck. And so once you graduate to that understanding, some people don't hit that till they're like 65, 70. But some people hit it early enough that, they can actually go and make changes and try and fail, land on their face, get up and try again. Because again, not to sound like a broken record, but that's the point of life. It's just to do stuff.
And why to do that when you don't have that community to catch your fall? That confidence comes from having a supportive community to be there to process it with you when something bad happens, so you're not on your own.
You're right. And so it ends up kind of becoming like a snake eating its own tail, because we don't have the community to begin with. Nobody's willing to start and do the thing. Where we need to start is, recrafting and recreating and revitalizing community for the 21st century. The way that our generation would. And I don't know exactly what that looks like, but I'm sure it's not what our grandparents used to do. I think that there's elements to it, but I think there's new stuff. What you say, Tony?
It's South Park, man. Nobody's safe from these jokes, man. Nobody. It's equal opportunity.
You're right.
And so I've been called a fascist, and people said my hairline is like a jump scare. It's kind of fucking funny, man. I don't know. Nobody's safe. If you put your face out there and you put your ideas out there, that it's not safe. And I think that's the state of things, and I think just being bold is what I would say is the number one strength, because it requires you to feel the fear of social anxiety and realize that the worst thing that's going to happen are words. 9 times out of 10, there's some physical threats out there, and they've, fuck those guys, show me where they're at. But either way, 9 times out of 10, they're just words. And if I can be called fascist and, people make fun of my damn receding hairline, whatever, man, fine.
Here's what I'll say. There's insults and things that can be slung at us. The thick skin is sort of needed, but a thick skin is easier to have if one actually has community. If there's people in your real life that support you, no matter what the people online say, then you're going to have that strength. And so yes, the and that's a physical presence. Don't get me wrong, online communities are great. I've built a really great one. I think we all really have taken time to really flesh out some good people in our circles. The echo chambers are working, but it pales in comparison. It's literally only a fragment of what the social commitment and engagement to one another is, compared to what we do boots on the ground, face to face, in actual reality. You know what I mean? I love my community. I really do. But if I, knock on wood, really end up in some shit, these guys aren't going to be able to actually help me. The friends and family in my hometown are going to be the ones that'll be able to catch me and support me and stuff. So that difference is important. Go ahead.
I mean, I never had a local community. So these past 3 years of homelessness, strangers and friends have taken me in on the internet every 6 to 8 weeks, a different place. So that can be community. For something you can, that is real. And that people say no one is coming to save you all the time. That's so sad to me, because people save me over and over again, and I don't even have, in a lot of places that I've been, any local community at all.
One of the things, a repeating lesson, is also the ability to learn to ask for help. It's there are people who want to help, which goes into this whole community building thing, which is why I love that Mr. Rogers clip where he's talking about his mom saying to look for the helpers.
That is vulnerable to ask.
Yeah.
That is terrifying, because you could get rejected, which I think goes back to what you were saying earlier, Tony.
Yeah.
About people, not knocking on the doors. That's rejection. That's one of the greatest human pains, isn't it, to be ostracized from the tribe?
Sometimes it's hard just to be vulnerable because of the opportunity to be ostracized. And I think that's a large reason why we don't knock on that door. because, and it's different for every single person. Like, there's not going to be like one unified reason that stops us from physically knocking. It's different for everybody. But I think a large part of it is like, it's the vulnerability with somebody who at this present time, even though they live in close proximity, they're an absolute stranger. And so, like, bridging that and being the one to initiate that, it takes a certain level of courage. But, so the guy that I was talking about earlier, Tim with longer tables, one of the things that he did after the 528 table was like this idea where you could buy into this dinner with your neighbors. You host. It could be like you get food out. You could cook the meal. It doesn't really matter. Again, they had the little cards to talk and da 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 da. And the idea was like really simple. Just sit down with people you don't normally sit down with, share a meal, have a conversation. Like, that's all he wanted to do. And I think he got like 10 or 12 people to participate across the US. So, I mean, like, that was, really cool, but like, it wasn't as successful as he wanted it to be. But the concept of, he even did videos of like, I'm asking people to do this. And so I've taken it among myself to go knock on my neighbor's door. And man, I got to tell you, I'm really nervous about doing this because like, it's vulnerable and I don't really, and like, he really like, he showed the receipts of doing the thing from like start to finish. And like, and like so like inspiring work, honestly. Longer tables, I think, is an amazing concept, and one of these kind of it signals that the theme is shifting, people's perspective is moving. But yeah, people, I think recognizing that it's difficult is part of the first step, but then getting over yourself and trying anyway is definitely a piece of the puzzle. Like, there's discernment needed. You can't just go knocking on anybody's door because, there's certain levels of danger for sure. Like, I'm not saying that, nobody's going to harm you and that kind of stuff, but like, to take the time to put yourself in a position where people, you can either help them or they can help you is kind of, is a bridge that can craft, that bright future or, something different. I mean, you might end up making a really kick-ass friend that lives right next door and they have for 7 years. You just didn't know. You don't know until you actually knock, that sort of deal. And I think with that, we're going to go ahead and transition to last words. Again, I want to thank every single person who has been here. Tony, I'm going to go and let you go first. And then we'll just go ahead and go clockwise and let everybody speak. Once again, thank you to everybody who's been here.
Well, I'm glad you brought these live panels back because it always gets my brain churning in places that are unexpected, which is really fun because I think a lot of responsibility to anybody who has their head in what I'll call the new world or next chapter or whatever it is we're looking for, the reprogramming of our daily life. I think just continually sharing our epiphanies, sharing the successes that we find, people out there doing the hard work when you find it, when you see it. But just keep trying to wake people up, man, because reinvesting into our local communities and reinvesting into ourselves thusly is a long game. And for it to be truly successful, like I said earlier, it needs to be a 1-2 punch. One, you need to start those movements that are giving the options for people to invest in something new. And then you have to get them to invest into it, So it's a multifaceted problem that we're dealing with that isn't just the producers and suppliers, and it's not really just the consumers either. It's the storytellers and the event planners, the preachers, the monks, the rabbis, the yoga instructors. Like when you have people in congregation, quote unquote, or groups, and they're ready to have their mind be filled with something, like use that as an opportunity to spread this idea of something new. Like inspire people, because that's what it's going to take for people to buy into it and for it to actually be successful. And be a peacekeeper, be a bridge builder. Remind people that human beings aren't trash bags, so that when people like us come on the internet and say, go knock on your neighbor's door, we're not looked at like we're fucking psychopaths.
Amen. Great final words, my friend. Thank you again for being here. I appreciate it. Lawrence, thank you for coming in clutch and showing up and showing out. Always great to have you, my friend. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Appreciate it again. I appreciate the space. I appreciate the discussion. We definitely have to have these conversations in order to forge some kind of solidarity going forward. So again, thank you. And in kind of perspective of the communication and the conversation today, Farm Fresh 24/7 is a free app that's downloadable right now on Google and Apple stores. You can find people in your area to grow, bake, or make, and you can start to invest in your own local economy, your community economy. So that's what that app is for. If you want to take it a step further, you can join Collectively Sustainable, and it kind of serves as the steering committee for Farm Fresh 24/7 and the culture that we're bringing that we have not named yet, but the culture that we're creating, that we're bringing forward into the new world and new space, is kind of galvanized in that collective sustainable movement. So again, Farm Fresh 24/7, Collectively Sustainable, those are the implements that we've done, brought to the forefront, actually used right now in Atlanta and in a couple states around the Americas. And just thankful to be in community, thankful to be in the conversation, and thankful to be a part of the change and the shift, man. So I appreciate it.
Right on, man. I want to say that you are an absolute inspiration as far as like doers are concerned. Like every time I look over at your cyber circle and see like all the stuff you got going on, I'm like, man, he's really got like his finger on the pulse. And like, I feel like, and this might be telecasting something, but there's a chance that every single person in this room might end up in the history books. But if it's only going to be one of us, I am damn sure it's probably going to be Lawrence, because like this is the thing, or at least one of the many things. So thank you so much for being in my circle and showing up. Jessie, thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to get you in on the box for season 2, and and all the great words that you've shared with us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here. Remember, follow your dream. What's your dream, and what action are you going to take, and who are you going to connect with next? So,
love it.
Thank y'all for having me.
Absolutely. So with all that, I want to say bye, guys. Thank you so much. Have a great night.
You too.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.
All right. The conversation for all things divestment has concluded. I want to thank once again everybody who showed up today, the people in the boxes, the people in the comments. Y'all did phenomenal, and it was amazing to be here and amazing to come back. Thank you so much for being here once more, and until next time, be well, fellow citizens.